Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Edan of LightCycleAstrology.com. Welcome back to the channel, friends. Today we are doing some horoscopes for all 12 rising signs. We're going to take a look at where this stellium in Pisces that is forming a square to Mars in Gemini is landing in your birth chart based on your rising sign. And that's going to give us some house topics to work with to see maybe how this stellium in square to Mars is showing up for you personally in your life. So I am going to put in the rising sign timestamp markers. So I apologize to last week. I had a lot of people watch a video and I spaced it and didn't put in the timestamps until after a few days. So this time around, for sure, I'm going to add in those timestamps. I really appreciate your guys' patience with that. I know it's a lot to listen to the whole video when you're only trying to see your one rising sign. So I apologize for that, but thanks for your patience, everybody. And as always, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you like astrology content. And also, you can go ahead and click the notification bell so you don't miss a video. Right now, I'm doing videos Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's pull up the real-time clock and take a look at where this stellium is landing in your birth chart. We'll start with the sign Aries here. So if you're an Aries rising, what's happening is that the stellium is forming in your 12th house and is making a square. All three of these planets at 25 degrees of Pisces is making a square to Mars in Gemini that is landing in your third house. So this is a action between the 12th and the third house. Of course, we also have Saturn now in your 12th house out of your 11th house. So what could this be like if you're an Aries rising? Well, there may be things that are coming from the shadows here that are coming now into the light. The 12th house in ancient astrology was associated with things in the shadows, sort of those blind spot areas. We all have them, these places that we don't realize until it's too late. People working in the shadows against us. This sort of shadowy realm of hospitals and prisons where sometimes we're isolated. So this is a pretty powerful energy. You've got the stellium that is containing within it a cazimi between Mercury and the Sun, as well as conjoining with Neptune, all in this same degree. So one of the delineations that I think is really profound here is you could see or receive kind of an aha moment where Mercury all of a sudden has this amazing imaginative like flash of intuition where all of a sudden there's just this big profound flash of intuition or insight that somehow illuminates things that are not good for you, habits maybe that you need to work on or try to improve upon, maybe things relating to health, ways in which you could get healthy. And of course, this stellium in the 12th could represent those around you that you're not aware of that may not have your best interests at heart, maybe working against you somehow. This was the house of hidden enemies. And also, technically speaking, it was just things that tend to lead you away from your best interest or yourself. So very interesting how this cazimi happens within the space of Neptune. And then there is this square over to the third house with Mars there. So as things come to light or as people do things that maybe you discover all of the sudden that are like, wow, I thought that you were a good person for me. I thought you had my back. There could be something right now that tends to bring in some kind of conflict with maybe people that are in your life day to day. Could be family members, could be close or old friends that you've known for a long time, or it could be simply some habitual thinking that you always do day to day. I guess a really easy example of this would be something like this could be kind of the moment where you just get really flustered in traffic and you slide into some road rage and you end up, before you know it, cutting somebody off and flipping them off and yelling at them. This could be just an altercation that happens in your everyday environment somewhere out there in the world. And it's just sort of your shadow side coming out. But then again, it could be, something coming out of the shadows that is from somebody else. So that is sort of the energy, the energetic expression that I sort of lean towards this kind of thing. So I guess in the positive, you could say that you're going to probably have some kind of discovery. There's a possibility or potential for discovering something that is going to give you the ability to sort of move away from something that is not good for you in one sense or another. So that's the positive side to this. There was a really, really interesting example on a mundane sense, this news item that came across this weekend. So this is a couple of days ago now, but I don't know if you guys heard of this. There was a news piece about the Jack Daniels production plant. I forget where it was. I don't know if it's Tennessee, but the plant seemingly is causing some kind of black growth on trees and bushes and flora in the area. And the people that live in that area, they're rising up and sort of fighting back against Jack Daniels. So Jack Daniels all of a sudden became like embroiled in kind of a controversy where they're affecting the environment around them. So this is a little bit of that kind of energy where a very interesting thing is that the way that they described this, they said that the people were fighting back. And this was my aha moment with this energy. Mars being in that forward position ahead in the zodiac as compared to the stellium in Pisces, right? Mars and Gemini being, ahead or to the left in the zodiac, and how in ancient astrology there was something called striking with a ray, where whenever two planets were engaged in some kind of aspect, the planet to the left or ahead in zodiacal order would receive the planet to the right or behind in zodiacal order would receive some kind of impact from the planet behind or to the right in zodiacal order. So, but what did the planet that was receiving that energy, in this case, it's going to be Mars, it strikes backwards. And they said the people were fighting back. And that's exactly what Mars does. And that's exactly what the energy of a square is, as well as sort of that conflict. So very, very interesting language. I felt like that really was a good example, really illustrated this energy that was, happening over the weekend that seemed to describe kind of like an Aries rising, stellium in Pisces, making a square to Mars and Gemini kind of delineation. So anyway, that's what I have for Aries risings. Now, if you are a Taurus rising, this is going to move this stellium into your 11th, and it is going to be engaging Mars in the 2nd. So I guess for me, if you're a Taurus rising, the most obvious example could be something that has to do with maybe a loss or sacrifice of money or personal valuables or possessions, because of something that is happening in a social context. Maybe it's some kind of social cause that you're engaged in, or a social situation, or it could be describing some kind of professional association that you have, or a network or group of people that you're engaged with that is connected to some personal goal or aspiration. But somehow or another, those social connections in the 11th seem to be affecting a potential loss or sacrifice of money or personal possessions of values of some kind. Or it could even be that you're losing like a personal helper at this time due to some way in which, things are shaking out with you socially. So there is kind of that energy between this 11th house that is social and the money house. This could be something like, could you simply be spending too much money while you're hanging out with friends out in the world? Are you having to use personal investments or money to chase after like a personal dream, and you're sort of like bankrolling something that you're working on with people? I'm getting a little bit of sort of this kind of delineation for Taurus risings. Okay, so play with that one and see maybe how that could fit whatever seems to be happening between things in the social sphere and personal money or possessions or assets or personal helpers, something like that. And I think that you'll sort of see maybe how this is shaking out. Okay, let's go ahead and put Gemini on the ascendant. So if you're a Gemini rising, this is going to place the stellium in your 10th house, and it is going to place Mars in your first house. So I live with 2 Gemini risings. It's very interesting for me. So whenever I make these horoscope videos, I'm always like checking in with both of my Gemini risings, because I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, maybe what could be an example of some how the aspects and questions are sort of showing up for them already. Now, so what's going on with one of them is my wife, and you know, my wife is about to give birth, and I think that I'm going out on a limb here, but I think that by this Thursday, I think she may very well be in the hospital in labor. It's hard to imagine such a powerful stellium coming out in the 10th house and making this square over to Mars in the first house, a place that is connected to the body, a place that is connected to identity, how we identify ourselves. So a couple of different things, but generally, I think for Gemini rising, there is a very strong connection with how the world sees you right now, as per maybe important people that, you know, like our bosses or people that you work with or something like this. But there is some kind of energy that is taking place in the 10th house, and the 10th house represents, in ancient astrology, how the world sees us. How are we viewed in the world? What's our visible personal impact to the world? And that's why they called it the place of like personal reputation, or like status, personal status or rank. It had these connections to what was our rank in the world, what is our personal reputation, how do people know us, or what do they know us for? So something is definitely coming together that is shifting how we're known in the world, and it is making a square over to Mars. So there is stress, tension, or conflict to the personal identity, the personal psychology, maybe even to the body. So there are a couple of ways in which that could shake out. But for one Gemini rising, I know that obviously giving birth to your first child is going to change your status to the world, that now you're entering parenthood, right? And of course, giving birth, there's that connection to the body. Obviously, you know, you're in a hospital giving birth. So that's just one example. Now, you know, it could be obviously something connected to career. There could even be, I could see a way in which something happens, like you change something about your livelihood, your career, your work. There could be like you get a promotion, you retire from a job, or you resign from a job. Anything that shifts or changes out there for you professionally or out there in the world. And somehow that just really impacts or gives your sense of yourself, it's sort of almost like an identity crisis, or at the very least, like a change to identity of some sort or another. So that's pretty profound. So I would watch for themes like that if you're a Gemini rising. Okay, now let's go ahead and put Cancer rising on the ascendant. And so if you're a Cancer rising, this is going to place this stellium in your 9th house, and it's going to place Mars in your 12th house. And so for Cancer risings, this could be connected to some kind of recovery of belief, spirituality. You know, you also have Saturn now in the 9th house. So there could be questions that come up about how do you take seriously? Saturn is a very serious planet, so it's bringing in some serious questions that are either having to do with belief systems or broader understandings of how you fit into the world, or just about the world itself, that comes about through experiences that are experiences we never had before, experiences that tend to expand our horizons. So when you have this cazimi between Mercury and the Sun, and you throw in Neptune there, that gives it a very far out kind of imagination. It's as if there is something that is tending towards having a pretty profound moment in the ways that we believe in things, or the ways that we understand things on a larger level. So you could see things like higher comprehension. Of course, astrology falls into the ninth house. This is the place of meditation and monks and temples and things like that. So there is definitely this connection with some pretty broad, higher knowledge that could potentially be coming in. And it's as if you have a revelation that causes you to maybe cut away certain elements in your life, like situations or people or things that are just not good for you. Could be a connection with education as well. So there's those themes that are sort of coming in between the 9th and the 12th. How are beliefs affecting things that are potentially not good for you or unhealthy for you? How do you see yourself in the broader picture of the world? And how does that cause tension with, maybe some bad habits, bad people, bad situations, unhealthy things that potentially Mars could be representing as needing to be cut away? So overall, I think that's sort of a positive thing for Cancer risings. Okay. And I'd love to hear any comments you guys have, or ways in which you see this coming out. If you're a Cancer rising, drop me a line in the comment section and say, hey, Edan, this was the example, that I seem to be able to see this coming out in. Okay, let's go ahead and place Leo on the ascendant now. So if you're a Leo rising, this is going to place this stellium of planets in Pisces in the 8th house, making a square to Mars in the 11th. This is a pretty interesting one as well. This one strikes me as a time when you could accidentally have conflict with friends or colleagues, people in your social network around you, that maybe is due to like miscommunication or misunderstanding about what is expected of you or of them, that potentially is damaging to relationships and might have something to do with the sharing of money or resources with people that you're involved with. So that's sort of where I lean for Leo risings. It's as if that quality of Mercury being very close to Neptune in the sign of Pisces, going through a cazimi, Jupiter as the ruler of Pisces can be a planet that brings in something that we overdo sometimes. So it gives me this sort of feeling. It's like, could we inadvertently or accidentally take something for granted, have a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up? Anything from like you go shopping with somebody and you need to, I don't know, maybe borrow some of their money, and you're like, hey, I'm going to pay you back my next paycheck, but they think you're going to pay them back like tomorrow, just something like that could potentially cause a little bit of drama or conflict with friends or people, and just having interesting things happen between what is expected of you and what you expect of others, sort of getting maybe a little bit tripped out or messed up. Now, one concrete example that I sort of think could be delineated by this is like getting pulled over and having like a DUI. You're sort of driving, and maybe you're driving to go see friends or go to a bar and hang out with friends or something, and maybe you've already gotten an early jump on having some fun, and you're pulled over and given a ticket, and guess what? You've been drinking, so you're over the legal limit somehow, even though you've only had just a little bit. Something like this, where you had this contact with with the sun as part of the stellium, maybe representing authority figures, things like that. Mercury maybe representing movement or communication, and Neptune, of course, being things that are sort of murky. So all three of these planets blending together and having some impact on friends or people that are expecting things of you, and maybe having something to do with a debt or obligation or a bill or anything like that, eighth house kinds of things. So that's what I'm seeing for Leo rising. Now, don't worry if this sounds overly negative, because again, you could think of it like, I guess another example would be simply having a pretty imaginative aha moment on how do you clear something up between friends? How do you go, oh, they think that I meant this. Well, all I got to do is give them a call and tell them, hey, I got your money or whatever it is, and boom, everything is fixed. So there could be some recovery around things that we owe to other people, miscommunications that have to do with our friends or people that we associate with at work or things like this. So there could be a positive angle to this as well, clearing up some conflict as well here. Okay, let's go ahead and put Virgo on the ascendant now. If you're a Virgo rising, this is going to move the stellium of planets into your 7th and 10th. So this is a pretty powerful for Virgo risings, because it's all these planets are landing in angular houses, very powerful houses. And there is, of course, so many different ways in which this could show up. But of course, a stellium of planets in the 7th could speak to what is happening with a significant partner or in a significant relationship, business partner. It could be something that is happening to somebody that you're in relationship with that somehow or another affects your reputation. Maybe it's something like your partner changes something at work, and this causes you to have to take a step back at your job or something like that. Maybe it's the expectations that are taking place in the relationship causes something to change with what you're doing day to day or your reputation. And of course, this could be anything like maybe, I guess an interesting example would be like, I remember when I was young and my mom used to come home and she'd be in tears because she worked at a job where she just had this terrible boss. And my dad always wanted to, fly off the handle and go and beat him up because he didn't want to see my mom so upset by this boss, right? That's a little bit of the energy of this potentially, where it's like maybe there's something challenging or difficult happening at work, and maybe your partner is really wanting to do something about that, come up with some kind of idea. So that's one way in which you could see this work. Now, another way could just simply be hopes and dreams, aspirations for relationships. Maybe, of course, you could have something that is finishing up or completing with a relationship or with something that you're working on, and this causes a change to career or reputation out there in the world. So this is kind of something that you could play with if you are a Virgo rising. Things around relationships and career is basically what we are going to be looking at for this combination. Okay, let's go ahead and put Libra on the ascendant, which is going to place the stellium in Pisces into your 6th house, and that is going to be squaring Mars in your 9th. Okay, this one is pretty interesting here. How do insights you've had or you're having with your job, maybe with your health or those parts of your life that are taking so much work to keep going, whatever, the 6th house tends to represent things that we're working on, projects that we're working on. And I don't ever want to just use one way of saying this, but in the broad, the 6th house could be, if you're Libra rising, what is happening in your life that it just seems like it's taking the most effort to sustain, something that is just laborious that you're working on all the time, or is just something that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of labor. That's kind of the area in life that the 6th house tends to represent. Sometimes it has to do with health. It depends on what natal promise you have in your birth chart, but it could be with a job. There's something there with the area of life that seems to just be very laborious, that is somehow affecting life and philosophical viewpoints that you have in life. So that's a really interesting thing. So let's say that beliefs about life, beliefs about spirituality, or questions about your level of education, this could bring in to focus a time where all of a sudden we have some aha moment about the work that we're doing and how it is really taxing on us. And it's like, man, it would be really, really great if I could, get this level of education, get this certificate, get this done so that I could move up and move out of the level of difficulty that I'm now sort of embroiled in. So there's a little bit of that kind of happening, but it's like whatever is difficult, hard, challenging, laborious in your life right now is just somehow impacting your overall philosophical viewpoint on where you stand in your life or where life stands in general. There's sort of those concerns sort of coming in right now. So that's what I see for Libra rising. Now, if you are a Scorpio rising, this is going to move the stellium of planets in Pisces into your 5th house that is making a square to Mars in Gemini. So if you're Scorpio rising, are you about to have a baby now? And things are going to be shifting around what people need from you. Well, I know I am as a Scorpio rising, so that's definitely one example that is pretty concrete for this rising sign. Or could there be questions about what fulfills you creatively if it's nothing to do with children? Could there be some way in which you fulfill yourself in a creative way, in a joyful way, in a recreational way, some way in which you blow off steam, just ways in which you like to have fun, play sports, or are very active? There's something very creative in the 5th house here, and somehow or another, that is having an impact on the 8th house topics, which could be anything from bills, the ways in which people expect you to keep doing what you're doing, the ways in which you keep expecting people to be doing what they're doing that sort of supports or helps you out. So the 8th house is sort of that area of life that describes how we get entangled, how we depend on people, how they depend on us. It can be about that. It can be about paying down debts. It can be about trying to live within your own resources versus needing the resources of your partner or something like that. So this could connect with children and the resources of your partner. This could be with, like, for example, if you're, something about children that is requiring you to support a partner, lend money to a partner for things to get done. That's sort of the example that I'm running into personally. So I guess play with the topics of creativity and children and how is that impacting the resources in relationship, what's expected of us or what we expect of other people, and how how we get entangled, like dependent, like how dependence works in our lives. So it's like, how do we have fun? How do we have joy? How are we creative? And how does that impact the ways in which we're dependent on other people or they're dependent on us? That is really where the aha moment is coming in here now. So there may be kind of a recovery towards that right now that is taking place. All right, let's go ahead and throw Sag on the ascendant. If you're a Sagittarius rising, this moves the stellium of planets in Pisces into your 4th house and is going to be squaring Mars in your 7th. So again, this is a very powerful place to have this action take place in your birth chart because these are angular houses, very important houses. The 1st, 10th, 7th, and 4th in ancient astrology were the most powerful and potent houses. So angular houses, of course, we're seeing something happening at home with the family. This could be anything from, you know, building a house, buying a house, looking for a house, wanting a house. There is a lot of inspiration in the fourth house somehow or another. So is it something like, wow, all of a sudden I've discovered my dream house. Now I have to figure out how we're going to afford it as a couple. And maybe this brings tension to a relationship where one partner is saying, well, I don't know if we can afford this, and I know you really want this, but can we do this? Something like that. It could be something to do with the father or parents that has an impact on your relationship as well. Could there be something about other family members that are somehow coming up right now and causing stress or tension within your own relationship, something like that. Of course, this could be a time where you're maybe remodeling and chasing sort of that dream situation that is connected to the most private areas of your life. Doesn't have to be home or family. It can be just, where do you go when you need to unwind and you need to get away from people? A place that feels like home to you. Going back to a hometown or something like that. There could be connections with going to see parents or family right now, and travel too. Mars in the 7th was often connected to traveling somewhere, especially in the sign of Gemini there. So you sort of play with those topics between home and family, and being big inspiration, big desire, big changes on the horizon, things that are recovering or being reset within the home, family, or living situation. That is somehow having an impact on intimate relationships, things that you're trying to get done, places you're trying to go, a marriage or a relationship or something like that. Okay, so let's go ahead now and put Capricorn on the ascendant. If you're a Capricorn rising, the stellium now falls into your 3rd house and is squaring Mars in the 6th. Yeah, so this one is interesting. I'm wondering what important changes are coming to a head around you in your everyday life that is connected to the sweat of your labors that is taking place right now. Again, we have that 6th house. Something is being connected to the sweat of your labor, to the laborious parts in your life. Are you inspired to write something right now? Visit family or old friends. Connect with people that are just always around you in your everyday life, like the person at the grocery store. Or is clarity coming to your mind, the sort of everyday mental spaces that you really want to articulate to people? If you articulate something right now, does it or will it potentially bring up some kind of conflict? That is the question that I sort of wonder about. It's like, if you make changes to that everyday environment, if you're inspired to do something that shakes up the everyday rituals or routines, if there's something that you have great imagination for right now, maybe you really want to sit down and write out your memoirs, or something like that. But somehow or another, that impacts this 6th house place that is connected to things that are very laborious, things you're trying to get done, things that are sort of just the mundane kind of like work or jobs that you're going to. So there's that connection with maybe articulating something that's been on your mind, or changing something in your environment and how that affects your work. Something like that could also be coming in. I suppose in a positive way, I wonder if there is something that you notice about your everyday environment or routines or rituals that it's like, all of a sudden it's like, wow, if I change this, it'll be way more healthy. But I need to cut something out, and maybe I need to stop working so hard. Maybe I need to stop spending so much time at the office, and more time at home or with, friends and family, something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and put Aquarius on the ascendant now. And this is going to move the stellium of planets in Pisces into your 2nd house that is going to be squaring Mars in the 5th. This one, of course, whenever we get Neptune, Mercury, and Saturn in the second house that has this relationship to things that we value, assets or resources or money that we have, personal possessions, maybe personal aids or helpers. And just in general, the second house in ancient astrology was associated with the quote unquote bad houses. And they said that the second house was the least of all bad houses out of the 4 bad houses, right? So the bad houses were the 12th, the 8th, the 6th, and the 2nd. But out of those 4 houses, generally 12th and the 8th and the 6th were kind of the really bad ones. And then the 2nd was technically a quote unquote bad house because it has no reception to the first house. It's sort of in the shadows of the first house. But this house is very interesting because in time, it brings things into the first house. As the world spins minute by minute, slowly these planets rise into the first house. So there's this interesting way in which the second house was called the gate of Hades. And also the 8th house was called the gate of Hades. Well, there are seeds that we plant for ourselves that over time they grow and they come to us. That is what the second house is getting at. It's sort of that fertile ground. That's why it was called the gate of Hades. Hades was a place that was in the earth or below the soil, and it was a gateway. So in time, things that we plant sort of rise up to us in the first house. And the reason why it was, quote unquote, a bad house was simply because certain desires that we want, certain material attachments that we have towards possessions or money, those desires come in now, and that is going to start off a new cycle of karma. So it makes me wonder if there isn't something that is really inspirational right now that makes you take risks in investments, the stock market, things that are just seemingly like, wow, there's like there's gold in them, their hills, right? And it's like Saturn moves into the house and you get very serious about it. You really want it very badly. You're very serious about wanting it. And it's a bit Mercury, or potentially a bit murky because Neptune is also in this house. So Neptune provides this very imaginative but somewhat dubious potential to investments or resources or desires that are coming in right now. And how does that connect to ways in which you connect to your own joy through hobbies, through recreation, through entertainment, through having fun or joy, romance, and also the 5th house is the house of children. So, do we need to feel like we have to not quite spend so much money on children for the sake of like investing in something that is going to cause conflict with children? If you're giving money to a child, that's sort of an obvious example. Could it be a way in which we need to curb activities that we do for fun because we think we need to save money to invest in this really potential thing? Are we simply getting caught up in really wanting something financially or materialistically right now that is just killing joy? Is there something happening that is killing joy? That is sort of where I get a sense of this stellium that is forming in the second house. But whatever it is, you could say that this is the moment where there is some kind of reset of things that you plant for yourself, either materially or at least aspirationally for yourself, that somehow has a weird effect for things of the 5th house, reputation, as far as children are concerned, children themselves, the sort of good karma that comes from just enjoying life and having fun times with friends, maybe being indulgent. I could also see maybe this being a time where, because you feel the need to become more serious about finances, that maybe you just sort of cut back on some overindulgent things that you do. Like maybe you do something all the time, like play golf, and it costs a lot of money or something. So that's what I'm wondering about for Aquarius rising. All right, now if we take this forward to Pisces and put Pisces on the ascendant, last and certainly not least, Pisces rising is going to have this very powerful stellium in arguably the most powerful place in the chart, which is the first house that is making a square back to the fourth. So with this stellium, clearly there is something emerging right now within the self that is very existential. It's very personal. It could be a way in which you identify yourself. It could be a way in which you see yourself. It could be some recovery back to health, doing something for your own health, that you take very seriously right now, that you're just very, very inspired to do. You might go a little bit overboard on it, and maybe that causes a little bit of tension in the family or the home. Things that you need to do for yourself that sort of limit time at home, limit time with the family, bring in maybe potential arguments or conflict at home. Now, one thing that I could definitely see with this is something like being able to have a breakthrough away from how you always thought about yourself in terms of like that was maybe influenced by your parents. This is maybe a moment where if you're Pisces rising, all of a sudden you realize you're like, wow, all my life, my parents sort of had this image of me, right? Characterized me like this or put me in this particular box. This could be a time where you break away from that in terms of your identity or how you think about yourself. And maybe this is just conflictual within your own within yourself in terms of your own foundational understanding of yourself, and maybe there's some conflict there. But I think overall it could be like a really positive thing, because sometimes the ways that our parents characterize us or think of us has a big impact on us, and we don't always know what that is. So this is maybe a time where there's a really positive change taking place within us that says, hey, I'm somehow liberated. I can imagine who I am and what I am. That is not strictly about who I was before in the past or how my parents think of me. So there's something there between the first house and the fourth house that is really very fundamental and very personal and existential for Pisces rising. So that's what I've got for today. You guys, thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you got something useful out of this. Please definitely let me know in the comments if you notice how this stellium and the square to Mars is showing up for you in your life. Just tell me what your rising sign is and maybe what's going on. And that's a great way for me to learn how some of these things take place in real time. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will put timestamps on this so it's easy to get to your rising sign. And I'll be back again on Friday with some more astrology that leads us into the weekend. So take care, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye.